Welcome back to the Deep Dive. You know, we like to go deep on all sorts of things here. But today we're taking a look at something pretty different.
Yeah, definitely different.
We're diving into Donald Trump's recent appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience.
Definitely not your typical Sunday morning political show.
Nope, not at all. This wasn't your typical political interview. This was a chance to hear Trump, well, kind of unrestrained, talking about everything from governing to aliens. Aliens.
Well, it was surprisingly candid. Yeah, we got a glimpse into his thoughts on a whole range of subjects.
Exactly. And you know me, I love those unexpected bits.
Oh, yeah, you do.
So let's start with something that really caught my eye. Trump's description of his life before politics. You know, the whole apprentice era.
Right.
It seems he wasn't exactly, itching to jump into the political ring.
Yeah, in fact, he said that the executives at NBC tried to talk him out of running.
Really?
Because The Apprentice was such a hit.
Wow. Imagine that.
They didn't want to lose him.
He was a ratings machine.
Yeah, he was making them a lot of money.
Yeah. So he had that going on. And he was also in the middle of some major construction projects. He was determined to finish those 2 big buildings.
He talked about wanting to finish them properly.
Yeah, properly. Sounds like he had a lot going on.
It does. He had a lot on his plate.
And then boom, presidential campaign.
It's quite a shift.
It is. And speaking of shifts, he talked about the actual experience of being in the White House.
Yeah.
You know, driving down Pennsylvania Avenue after the inauguration.
Right, passing by the hotel he built.
Yeah, surrounded by security. He said it was surreal.
He did.
Surreal, that's the word he used.
Yeah.
And then going inside the White House, he talked about the interior.
Yeah, he said he expected something much more stark and cold.
But instead...
history, elegance.
And he was fascinated by the Lincoln bedroom.
Oh, the Lincoln bedroom?
The original Gettysburg Address. All of it.
He really zeroed in on those details.
He did. They resonated with him. He even compared himself to Lincoln.
Really?
Mentioned how they both faced incredible challenges and personal struggles.
Interesting. That's quite a comparison.
It reveals how he sees himself.
Yeah, not just a politician, but a historical figure, grappling with weighty decisions.
Definitely. But let's be real, governing is about a lot more than historical artifacts and fancy bedrooms.
Yeah.
Trump got real about the challenges he faced coming in with no political experience.
Absolutely. He talked about the sheer number of appointments he had to make. 10,000.
10,000.
Can you imagine?
That's a lot of people.
It is. And the difficulty of choosing the right people, especially when you're pulling from outside the traditional political sphere.
Like bringing in people from the business world.
Right. And he admitted to making some bad choices.
Oh, yeah. He even called some of his appointees stiffs.
Stiffs.
People who were too inflexible, too focused on just surviving within the system.
He wasn't a fan of that approach.
He told this story about a congressman who stood in office for 28 years by never taking a controversial stance.
Wow, 28 years. Never rocking the boat.
Playing it safe, the ultimate survivor. But Trump wasn't impressed.
No, he wasn't.
He respects the guy's survival skills. But he clearly thinks there's more to governing than just hanging on.
It shows the kind of political maneuvering he felt he was up against.
Right, this idea of entrenched interests resisting change.
And that leads us to one of Trump's core beliefs, the deep state.
Yes, the deep state. He believes there's a system within the government working against him from the moment he won the election.
A network of bureaucrats and officials.
Actively trying to undermine his agenda.
He claims that impeachment proceedings were already in motion before he even took office.
Wow.
He felt like he was in survival mode from day one.
Fighting an uphill battle.
Yeah.
So from his perspective, it's not just incompetence he's dealing with. It's active sabotage.
Right. It's a completely different way of seeing things.
It shapes how he views his actions and decisions.
It's like a lens through which he interprets events.
Okay, I get it. Well, let's shift gears for a minute and talk about something a little less well-contentious. The economy.
Okay.
Trump seemed much more comfortable talking about his economic policies.
He did. He seemed proud of what he accomplished.
He pointed to the strong economy during his term.
Tax cuts, deregulation efforts, record low unemployment.
And he spent a lot of time talking about tariffs.
Tariffs.
Yeah, he sees them as a key tool for protecting American jobs and businesses.
He told that story about the massive Chinese-owned auto plant.
The one in Mexico?
Yeah, they were going to produce cars for the U.S. market.
And Trump's response?
A 200% tariff on every single car.
If it was operational when he became president.
And they canceled the project.
Powerful negotiating tactic.
Is?
To drive home his point, he brought up a historical example, an 1887 commission.
What was that about?
figuring out what to do with all the excess revenue generated by tariffs.
Excess revenue from tariffs.
He believes America has historically benefited from this approach.
Interesting.
So he's looking back at the past for inspiration.
But he also talked about the future.
He did. He talked about Elon Musk, called him a great guy.
From a different planet.
He seemed genuinely impressed by Musk's accomplishments, especially with SpaceX.
He told that story about watching a SpaceX rocket land.
And being captivated by it.
He called Musk afterwards to congratulate him.
Who else can do that? He said.
It highlights his recognition of innovation.
And his willingness to look beyond traditional industries for solutions.
Like calling Musk during his presidency to get Starlink internet service to areas hit by hurricanes.
He said it saved lives, that it was even better than traditional wired connections.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
So he's embracing cutting-edge technology for practical applications. But his stance on renewable energy is, well, let's just say it's complicated.
He called windmills the ugliest thing.
And pollution.
But he also claims to have had the cleanest air and water during his presidency.
He criticizes China's environmental practices,
saying their pollution affects the U.S.
So he's concerned about the environment.
But his solutions often clash with conventional environmentalist views.
He's frustrated with what he sees as bureaucratic overreach in the name of environmental protection.
He told that story about visiting California.
And the water shortage.
He was told that water was being diverted into the Pacific Ocean to protect a tiny fish.
He thought that was ridiculous.
Causing drought-like conditions.
He's skeptical of regulations that he sees as hindering economic development.
He boasted about streamlining the permitting process for that Foxconn plant in Wisconsin.
Cutting through red tape.
To get it built.
So he sees a conflict between environmental protection and economic growth.
A tension he tries to resolve through his own lens.
And that brings us to a surprising solution. He proposed nuclear power.
Nuclear power?
Yeah. He believes in it as a clean and safe energy source.
He even mentioned his uncle,
Dr. John Trump,
a scientist who predicted the power of nuclear technology early on.
It's clear he's open to solutions that are often dismissed by environmental groups.
He's definitely not afraid to go against the grain.
He's also quick to criticize what he sees as hypocrisy on the other side.
Like with electric cars.
He pointed out that many of them are powered by electricity generated from coal-fired plants.
He called it a ridiculous thing.
People trying to feel good about being green without addressing the underlying issues.
It's a complex topic, and Trump definitely has strong opinions about it.
He does. But let's move on to an even more contentious subject, the 2020 election.
Okay.
As you know, Trump has repeatedly claimed he was robbed.
He has.
And he didn't hold back on expressing his frustration.
He brought up several examples of what he believes is evidence of election fraud.
Like the lack of legislative approval for changes to voting procedures in many states.
And problems with ballot access and irregularities in Wisconsin.
And of course, the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Right.
He believes the 51 intelligence officials who called it Russian disinformation were lying.
And that the suppression of this story by social media platforms like Twitter had a significant impact on the election outcome.
He argues that no objective observer would want lies to influence elections.
He sees it as a clear example of election interference.
It's important to note that these claims have been widely disputed, but they clearly remain central to Trump's narrative.
They fuel his distrust of the system.
And that distrust extends to his views on immigration and border security.
He believes open borders are a threat to national security.
He's highly critical of how the current administration is handling the border crisis.
He shared an anecdote about visiting Springfield, Ohio.
And witnessing the impact of a large influx of migrants.
The strain on the local hospital and schools.
He connects this directly to his support for voter ID laws.
He argues that they're essential for ensuring fair elections.
He's highly critical of the Democratic Party's opposition to voter ID.
Claiming their policies wouldn't win without what he considers cheating.
He compared voting to going to the grocery store.
You give ID to buy groceries, but not to vote.
It highlights how he frames the issue as a matter of common sense and security.
He then described his own experience voting in Palm Beach.
Multiple forms of ID, closely watched while signing his ballot.
He seemed to appreciate the rigor of that process.
It's a stark contrast to his claims of widespread voter fraud elsewhere.
It illustrates how his personal experiences often inform his political beliefs.
Speaking of beliefs, let's dive into his views on social issues.
Which are, as you might expect,
equally controversial.
He took aim at transgender athletes competing in women's sports.
He claimed that allowing men to compete in women's sports is widely unpopular.
And only possible because of manipulated elections.
He even shared a story about taking a picture with a female athlete.
And her much larger male competitor.
Highlighting the physical differences.
It's a sensitive issue.
It is.
And his comments reflect his alignment with a particular segment of the electorate.
He's always pushing buttons, stirring the pot.
But then just when you think you've got a handle on him, he throws a curveball. The JFK Files.
He talked about his decision to release them.
And claimed he was pressured to keep some information classified.
He believes the files should be fully open for transparency and what he called cleansing.
Cleansing.
He even mentioned a Martin Luther King Jr. file that he finds intriguing.
Suggesting there are more secrets yet to be revealed.
A glimpse into his fascination with historical mysteries.
And his distrust of government secrecy.
It plays into his tendency to see conspiracies and hidden agendas.
A theme that runs through many of his beliefs.
But perhaps the biggest surprise came when he started talking about
aliens.
Aliens.
Who would have thought?
He revealed that he's spoken to people about extraterrestrial life.
And interviewed jet pilots who claim to have seen strange objects moving at incredible speeds.
He mentioned his visit to Area 51.
But said he personally doesn't have strong beliefs about aliens.
However, he did say, there's no reason not to think that Mars and all these planets don't have life.
So he's open to the possibility.
It's that openness to the unexpected, the unconventional, that makes him such a compelling figure.
He's full of contradictions and surprises.
Just when you think you've figured him out, he throws you a curveball.
And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating.
We're just scratching the surface here.
There's so much more to unpack.
Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll explore even more of Trump's claims and insights.
We'll delve into his thoughts on foreign policy, his relationships with world leaders, and his plans for a potential second term. Welcome back to our deep dive into Donald Trump's interview on the Joe Rogan Experience.
Last time we left off talking about aliens.
Aliens, right?
But let's bring things back down to earth for a bit.
Back to earth.
Okay. Trump talked a lot about the challenges he faced in governing, especially dealing with what he sees as a deeply entrenched bureaucracy.
Right, the deep state.
This hidden network working to undermine his agenda.
A powerful narrative.
It is.
Yeah.
Even if it's hard to pin down exactly what he means by it.
True.
But it plays into this distrust in institutions.
A feeling that the average person's voice doesn't matter.
Yeah, and that resonates with a lot of people, regardless of their political views.
It does. It taps into a deep frustration with the status quo.
He even compared himself to Al Capone.
Al Capone?
Said he's been investigated more than Capone simply because he's a political opponent of the establishment.
Wow. That's quite a comparison.
It is. Yeah. But it shows how he feels.
Like he's being unfairly targeted.
And a victim of political persecution.
It's part of that us versus them mentality.
Which he does so well.
He does.
But let's change gears for a second.
Okay.
Trump brought up something that I did not see coming.
What's that?
His love of golf.
Golf.
Yeah, he claimed to have won 32 club championships.
32.
And he told this story about playing with Bryson DeChambeau.
The pro golfer.
Right? Shortly after DeChambeau had been shot.
Shot?
Getting
shot and then hitting the golf course?
A few days later. It's crazy.
It is.
It speaks to his resilience, though.
His drive to keep going.
No matter what.
Or maybe just blowing off some steam.
Maybe. He did say that golf helps him clear his mind.
To relax and focus.
Yeah. Something other than the pressures of politics.
He sees it as a way to connect with people, too.
He talked about the handicap system.
Right. Anyone can play with anyone.
Regardless of their skill level.
It levels the playing field.
Ironic, considering his views on other forms of equality.
Yeah, a little bit. But speaking of leveling the playing field, he had a lot to say about trade and economic competition.
Especially with China.
He went back to his tariffs strategy.
Called tariffs the most beautiful word in business.
Really?
He believes they protect American jobs.
And force other countries to play fair?
He even told a story about a time when France was going to tax American companies.
What did he do?
Threatened to retaliate with tariffs on French wine and champagne.
Classic Trump.
He said that the French President Macron backed down within minutes.
Wow.
It's that hard-nosed negotiating style that his supporters love.
Makes him seem strong.
But he's not just about strong-arming other countries. He talked about the importance of a strong military.
And highlighted his role in establishing the Space Force.
Right. He sees it as vital for national defense.
Essential for maintaining American dominance in space.
And he drew a sharp contrast between his approach to the military and the Biden administration's handling of the withdrawal from Afghanistan.
He called it a disaster.
Blamed it on incompetent leadership.
He specifically targeted General Mark Milley,
The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
What did he say about him?
Called him stupid and unwise.
Strong words.
He claimed that he had negotiated a deal with the Taliban.
A deal that would have allowed the U.S. to withdraw safely.
And without leaving behind all that equipment.
He said he told the military, I want every plane, every tank, even the goggles. It's cheaper to fly it out than to leave it there.
He thinks his plan would have prevented the chaos
And loss of life.
that occurred during the actual withdrawal.
It's a version of events that's been challenged by many.
It has. But it feeds into this narrative of him being a strong and decisive leader.
Who knows how to deal with adversaries?
And he doesn't just talk tough. He takes action. He told a story about flying into Iraq on a darkened plane.
To meet with generals.
To discuss strategy for defeating ISIS. He described the experience in detail, emphasized the danger and the secrecy.
He even went into the cockpit.
Chatted with the pilots. Said they look like movie stars.
He admires those who put their lives on the line.
He contrasted them with the people he sees as idiots running the military now.
He claims the current leadership is too focused on woke ideology.
And not enough on winning wars.
It's a theme he keeps returning to. The idea that America is being weakened by internal enemies.
By people who are undermining traditional values and institutions.
A message that resonates with a lot of people.
It does. It's about cultural anxiety, the fear of losing something that was once taken for granted.
And Trump knows how to tap into that fear.
He does. He also offers a solution.
A return to strength.
A reassertion of American power.
On the world stage.
He emphasized the importance of strength in dealing with adversaries like Russia and China.
He claimed that Russia would never have invaded Ukraine if he were still president.
He did. And he boasted about his ability to get things done.
When others have failed.
He told a story about getting North Korea to release American hostages.
He claimed he developed a close relationship with Kim Jong-un.
He said, if you have a smart president, you're not going to have a problem.
He clearly believes that he is that smart president.
The one who can restore America to its former glory.
But how does he plan to do that?
What are his specific policies?
That's where things get a little fuzzy.
He speaks in broad strokes.
Tax cuts, deregulation, energy independence. A tough stance on immigration.
But the details are lacking.
He's much better at painting a picture of the problem
than outlining a solution.
It's a classic populist approach.
Identify the enemy, stoke the fear. Promise to fix everything.
Without getting bogged down in specifics.
And it seems to be working for him. He still draws huge crowds.
His message resonates with a lot of people.
Whether you agree with him or not, he's a force to be reckoned with.
He is. There's no denying that.
And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating.
It's a chance to understand what drives him, what motivates his supporters,
and what his vision for America looks like.
A complex picture, full of contradictions and unanswered questions.
But that's what makes it so compelling.
It's a story that's still unfolding.
And we're all watching to see what happens next.
We are.
As we continue this deep dive, we're going to explore some of the more controversial aspects of Trump's worldview.
Like his stance on social issues.
His approach to foreign policy.
And his legacy as president.
Welcome back to the deep dive. It feels like we've gone down about 1,000 rabbit holes with this Trump-Rogan interview.
We have, haven't we? It's been a wild ride.
But you know what? One thing that really struck me was Trump's storytelling.
Oh, yeah. He's a master storyteller.
He is. He weaves these personal anecdotes into his political arguments.
It makes him relatable.
Yeah, even folksy. Despite being, a billionaire who lived in a gilded penthouse.
Right. It shouldn't work, but it does.
Remember that whole McDonald's thing?
McDonald's thing.
He went to McDonald's for a campaign event, ordered a bunch of food.
And it went viral?
He thought it was a quick photo op.
But it became this huge media moment.
It shows his understanding of what captures the public's attention.
He's a master of those moments. Relatable and outlandish at the same time.
He's always put on a show.
Which makes him so compelling to watch.
Even if you completely disagree with him.
Absolutely. But it's not all entertainment. He talked about some serious stuff, too.
Yeah, like the threat of nuclear proliferation.
He called it nuclear warming.
Said it's a bigger threat than global warming.
He's particularly worried about North Korea and Iran getting nukes.
He claimed he had a good relationship with Kim Jong-un.
That he de-escalated tensions.
But he also acknowledged the danger of nuclear weapons. The need for strong leadership to prevent a catastrophe.
He said 1 bomb and Israel is gone. 1 bomb could take out the entire East Coast.
Chilling thought.
It really underscores the stakes
Of international diplomacy.
Exactly.
He expressed confidence in his ability to handle these challenges, though.
Of course he did.
Said he could have prevented the war in Ukraine.
If he were still president.
He would have met with Putin and Zelensky. Use his negotiating skills to broker a peace deal.
Impossible to know what would happen.
It is, but it's classic Trump.
That belief that he has unique abilities to solve global problems.
He's never lacked confidence. And speaking of confidence, let's talk about his assessment of the current administration's handling of the economy.
Oh boy, he was not a fan.
He was highly critical. Said their policies have fueled inflation and energy dependence.
He pointed to the cancellation of the Keystone XL pipeline.
And restricting drilling on federal lands.
He said, we have more oil and gas under our feet than any other nation, and Biden won't let us use it.
A common sentiment among those who support energy independence.
Right.
It's a core part of Trump's economic vision.
America first, leverage its own resources.
Don't be beholden to other countries. It's a powerful message.
It is. Especially for those who feel like America's lost its way.
Lost its standing on the world stage.
Exactly.
And it all comes back to that phrase.
Make America great again.
A phrase that's become synonymous with his brand.
It taps into this longing for a simpler time.
When America was a dominant force, a beacon of prosperity and strength.
And Trump presents himself as the one who can bring that back.
He's the outsider, the disruptor, the one who can shake things up and get things done.
Whether you love him or hate him, there's no denying his impact.
He changed the conversation, shifted the Overton window, forced us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves.
He's a polarizing figure.
But he's also a fascinating case study. Leadership ambition, the power of narrative.
His ability to connect with people on an emotional level is remarkable.
It's what makes this deep dive so valuable.
It's not about agreeing or disagreeing with his views. It's about understanding them.
Grappling with them, engaging in thoughtful discussion.
About the issues he raises.
Exactly. So we've explored his take on a lot of different things.
From his pre-politics life to his time in the White House.
His economic policies.
Yeah.
His views on aliens, even McDonald's.
We've unpacked his claims, analyzed his arguments.
Tried to make sense of this complex and often contradictory figure.
We have.
As we wrap up this deep dive, we leave you with a simple question. What do you think? Where do you stand on the issues he raises?
We encourage you to keep exploring these questions, to have those tough conversations, and to form your own conclusions.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the mind of Donald Trump. And be sure to join us next time for a deep dive into a completely different topic.